So
The case has not been yet picked up by the district attorney's office. The district attorney has said that, do you want- yeah. The district attorney has said that perhaps the cases that Sergeant Mike Horn headed up shouldn't be affected by this arrest unless he was a witness. Can you speak on that?
that'd be the DA to decide that. I don't talk for the DA's office. I talk for the sheriff's office. That's something the DA's office has to deal with. Well, the drug program was started because my mother was in hospice, and then when she died, I tried to give the drugs back to the hospice. They can't take them. And then I realized by that, and it was drugs, but I realized by that the people, what they were doing was disposing, seeing by the septic system, which can poison the water system, or just throwing them out in the trash, where people can go dumpster diving and get these drugs. So we've been very successful with this program. This was the only time we actually heard a problem. And from my understanding, it's been adjudicated pretty quickly. So.
Will this change any of your protocol as far as the drug take-back program and how you store drugs and how you inventory them?
The drugs, the drugs were supposed to be brought in. If you read the article in the newspaper, the way that this occurred is drugs went against policy. We have a policy on drugs. Those drugs go into evidence when the drugs have to be disposed of, because there's a time when we take the corner cases, we're required by law to take the drugs. People don't have a choice in that. Sorry. But we put them in evidence. In this case, the supervisor allegedly intervened with that process and decided that he was going to take them and put them into evidence. There was some suspicions about that because that's contrary to policy. And that's when it was brought to the attention of the investigator. Excuse me, getting the flu like everybody else, I guess. That was brought to the attention of the investigator, who decided to pursue an investigation to determine if there's any impropriety. Discovered that there was, and we proceeded from there.
And I had one other question, and that is, as far as drug testing, you guys, or at least you have been quoted as that you would like to start some drug testing within the sheriff's department, maybe random testing. Are you going to be pursuing that anymore?
We can't. And I tell you why. I would love to. I've been a proponent of drug testing way back when I started policing in 1973. I've been a proponent of that. There's deputies that are proponents. There's officers back in JCPD who are proponents of drug testing. Believe that it should have been. It's an excellent program. There's the problem. There has to be done by an outside contractor. We cannot take our own urine test or drug test. We can't do that. It has to be done by an outside agency. There has to be a process where it's random drug testing. The law has to be random testing. That has to develop a system, and you can develop the system random drug testing. There is no money in the budget. When I became sheriff of Nye County, I had already talked to the union officials at that time from both the NCLEA and the NCMEA, the law enforcement union for the deputies and law enforcement for the managers of policing. And they had stated that they had made agreements with they had talked about it in their negotiations for contracts. They're the ones that proposed it. The county never followed through with that. Recently, there hasn't been any, and I went to the commissioners based upon the information I had at the time in order to talk about funding it, and they wouldn't fund it. But we brought it up. Rick Marshall and I had brought it up in several budget meetings when we had them, and they refused to say there's no money in the budget for something like that. So the commissioners, first of all, it had to be a contractual agreement, because they have to get a contract to come in and do the random drug testing and the procedure how to do that. They have to meet the unions to get that into the contract, which, my understanding, the unions are for it. They're for it. Members of the Nye County Sheriffs I talked to over the years of being deputy and sheriff are for it. The only thing hindrance is in the way is funding, and for the commissioners to come forward with a funding source and also coming forward with a contract and a way of making sure that it's random drug testing. You just can't you just can't say, come on in, it's got to be random drug testing. And then, and we all said, Rick Marshall, when Captain Beck was here, and we said, every time you want, come and get ours. And every time you want to take a random drug test, come and get ours as well. We have nothing to hide. And neither do the deputies of the Nye County Sheriff's Office. And remember that every year deputies do go for physicals, which this is part of physical as well during the screening. So, I mean, that's the only one, that's the only testing we get is once a year on the physical side, but I would love to see random drug testing. The deputies would love to see random drug testing. My understanding from the unions would like to see it as well. And all they'd have to do is negotiate it or have the unions come back and say this is something they would like to see for their members and develop a funding source. But, you know, like I said, it's not there. We wanted it. I wanted it when I first became sheriff of Nye County. And it hasn't been something that hasn't been getting the attention of the people who actually approve the budgets. And you have something, Rick Marshall and I sometimes are finding money now, even to keep our phones, the agency phones, you know, which only have several of them operating, because we have sometimes no money for that. We have to take it from another source with the sheriff's office. So the Nye County's commissioners have cut our budget to basically nothing. And we don't have the ability, you know, we're still trying to figure out ways of feeding, you know, inmates, and we have to work these things out, of course, with the financial side of the county. But until they come up with a contract and a funding source, unfortunately, that may not necessarily be something that's in the near future of the Nye County Sheriff's Office, regrettably, for us.
Do you foresee, or have you been contacted by any other members of the public about any other improprieties that Sergeant Horn has committed or been accused of?
No.
This is Deanna O'Donnell at the Ian Deutsch Government Complex for News 46.